there has always been a lot of programs that kind of start up in the game space because it is something that is attractive to 17, 18-year-olds, but they don't last very long, or they kind of like pivot to be something very narrow.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to episode 35 of the Sandbox.Space weekly podcast. I, of course, am your host, Chris, joined as always by baby girl. And Pumpkin's over there causing trouble. This is the weekly talk show where we talk about the games industry, and we have some interesting things to talk about. But first, we are joined by special guest John Bowditch. How are you, John?
Doing great. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So, John, you have been, I don't remember where we first met, where our first date was, but we've known each other for quite a while. And you are sort of the man in charge of the Grid Lab, which is a pretty well-known Ohio University place. It's got a long history because you're in the Scripps School, which is the journalism school, correct?
Journalism college. Yeah.
But you are you have been spearheading sort of games development and interactive media at Ohio University for quite a while. So I don't know if you want to maybe let people know a little bit about yourself and what you've been working on.
Sure. Well, I do remember our first meeting was, I think it was called the Ohio Game Development Expo.
Oh yeah, OGDE.
Yeah. The precursor to GDEX, and it was at the student union at Ohio State, much smaller, and then obviously it grew into COSI, and now it's this massive thing that takes up the Greater Columbus Convention Center. So it's really evolved. Well, I'm John Bowditch. I am the director of the Game Research and Immersive Design Lab, better known as the Grid Lab. I'm also an associate professor in the J. Warren McClure School of Emerging Communication Technologies. So a lot of stuff to put on a business card. We basically just refer to the school as the McClure School. And the McClure School teaches kind of two tracks. One is networking and IT focused, and the other one, which I primarily teach in, is VR and game development. And the program has existed in some form for almost 20 years now. So we've been doing this quite a bit. The 20th anniversary of the Grid Lab is actually in 2025, so we're going to have some special events around that.
I would love to come.
Yeah, well, you'll definitely be on the invite list. So the Grid Lab is really a research and development center for projects that utilize gaming technology. Now, we make a lot of games, but we may not necessarily be making games as part of the Grid Lab project. We use gaming technology. We do a lot of training and simulation for healthcare and law enforcement. But we also make a lot of mini games that get published on app stores. We just finished a game with East Carolina University called Athamos, which is a game directed towards middle school age students with ADHD. That's getting tested with those students now. So they're getting like real world or real classroom instruction and like tools and tricks to kind of manage their ADHD. And this game is designed to kind of reinforce a lot of those principles. So yeah, I mean, it's one of the nice things is it's open to everyone in our college, regardless of your major. So yeah, Scripps College is primarily known for journalism, historic journalism program, but we also have media arts production students, so film, video, music production, visual communication, communication studies, and then the kind of technical school was us. So all of those students on day one get access to the Grid Lab. And we encourage them just to come to the lab and play and experiment. And, they don't have to do homework or work on research projects there. It's okay to play.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've been sort of honored that you've invited me out so many times to the space. I got to see over the years how it has sort of been renovated and improved. And I remember when you guys got that, like the motion capture lab up and running, we're super jazzed about that. And so that's really cool. And as most of our audience knows, and at Multivarious, most of our projects, because we're very similar, where we're a game and software developer, most of our projects are in the healthcare space, which is, I think, just a result of me coming from healthcare. And so we've done projects with OSU, Nationwide Children's Hospital, University of Calgary, all sorts of different projects in the healthcare space, which has been really cool. And then, we've worked on things that are like more games, actual games as well. We've worked on AAA games, but the idea that sort of gaming and gaming technology, I've used the term sort of like creative tech for a while, is applicable to so many different things. It's sort of like a story we need to keep telling to people, because most people don't know games. They don't really think about it. They don't think about all the sort of halo effects that are involved in games development, from, obviously programming, art, design, but then music, writing, voiceover, and then of course you've got, accounting and legal and marketing and all. Like it's a fully fledged industry. But one of my questions before we kind of like dig into some of the today's topics, though, is just how have you noticed maybe the university, Ohio University, or maybe the surrounding businesses and government leaders, how have you noticed them sort of approaching gaming and gaming technology change over the past 10 years?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's no longer considered a toy. I think I think one of the biggest issues with games historically is they were available for sale at Toys R Us, right? So like from the very beginning, it's always been associated as like a toy, and not something that's like that can be used for like serious and practical reasons. I think though, with the kind of expansion of all these great tools to make games or use gaming technology, and also things like VR and mobile really starting to explode. Mobile's already exploded, but VR is starting to kind of follow in that path. People see this as a viable option to training. And honestly, most of our students that graduate and go into entertainment games, they tend to get out of entertainment games and go into some other industry doing games or software development, within 10 years. There's a lot of reasons why. I mean, like healthcare, defense, industry, theme parks. These are all industries that, for one, pay better than entertainment games, and they also provide like a better work-life balance. You can have a 9 to 5 and a family and do game development and make considerable amount of money doing it. It's not nearly as kind of cutthroat as entertainment games.
Well,
Honestly, I don't believe it, John. Toxic either. What's that?
I said I don't believe it. I'm over here with like 5 jobs. I don't. What are you talking about?
Well, I mean, like,
I'm kidding.
I mean, look at entertainment games last year. Like last year, as far as game releases go, it's probably a Hall of Fame year. I mean, 2023, I think there was 11, 12, 13 games that had a Metacritic score of 90 or greater. Right? I mean, like, that's incredible. But it was also like a year where, in 2023, the entertainment industry had thousands of layoffs. And actually, the layoffs to date in 2024 has actually exceeded 2023.
Yeah.
So
it doesn't
look
one of
like
the
a
first
healthy industry.
We were working on a AAA expansion project, and we had ramped up to, I think, like 33 people. And then our expansion, the company we were working with, they were doing 3 expansions. We were supposed to be the 3rd in the rotation. They ended up canceling ours, and to my knowledge, they've released kind of like half of one of the expansions they had planned out of the 3. So we went from 33 people working on this thing down to 5. And we were kind of the first in that flood of layoffs, which, as you mentioned, we just talked last week about Bungie. doing a bunch of
Yep.
layoffs. So it's still happening.
Yeah, Bungie's layoffs broke my heart because I was really looking forward to the Marathon remake.
Oh, are you a
Um,
marathoner?
well, I mean, like I love the fact that Bungie's first kind of online multiplayer shooter was for Mac only. I mean, I
Hmm.
appreciate that.
Yeah, totally.
Um,
Yeah, one of
you
my
know, but
friends loved it, loved marathon. But go ahead, go ahead.
I mean, so it's really volatile. You have a lot of um, mid-career and senior talent that is now laid off looking for jobs, probably willing to take entry-level jobs. And so like the entertainment industry just is super competitive and will always be super competitive. Um, I think it's worth noting that there are other avenues for using these skills that are often pay better. They might, I mean, they're in every city across the country. It's not like confined to the coasts.
Hmm.
Um, like we're a state university in Ohio, and so we have somewhat of a responsibility to Ohio taxpayers to help develop the Ohio economy, and that's something I'm really passionate about. Um, but realistically, a lot of our students pack up and move to California when they graduate, or Texas, or Florida, or somewhere else. But we're starting to see a trend where a lot more people are settling into Columbus, Cincinnati, Cleveland after graduation, and working for non-game industry companies, but doing game-related work.
How have you seen COVID and the like sort of rise of remote work maybe play into that?
Um, yeah, COVID was. We're still seeing the effects of that. I think the remote work part of it has been the most surprising. I mean, we have students that have graduated from our program are now working for game studios as developers and designers, but they still live in Athens, right? So we have a former graduate student. She is now a designer at Ubisoft, but I think she's 2 or 3 miles away from me currently at the moment in Athens, right? So the nice part about remote work is you can choose to live wherever you want, and as long as you're following through on the work, companies are happy, should be happy. I think um, there's a lot of people that probably would not care for that kind of lifestyle. I hated teaching online. I hated being like isolated away from everyone during COVID. I much prefer to like be around other people and collaborate.
Sure.
But I know that's not true for everyone. Everyone kind of has different needs and desires. So,
Yeah, yeah. I think we tussle with this at Multivarious because we closed our office during COVID. We're all working remote now, and I do miss being in the office. I miss being able to be like, oh, let's go whiteboard something out. I mean, the nice thing is that I spend 90% of my day in pajamas nowadays, hanging out with my dog and my cat. So that's cool, I guess. But I joke about like I took a job. I work one night a week at the local community gym here, just so I can kind of get out of the house and meet people and have some sort of personal connection
nice.
with folks. But I do think that yes, they are my GDEX PJs as well. But I do think that you miss those creative collisions. This was a big thing that like they talked about. I don't know if you remember when Apple was doing the spaceship campus, and Steve Jobs intentionally tried to design it so that people would like inherently bump into each other and be forced
Or
to kind of do it.
serendipity.
Yeah. Now he went a little too far, and they had to like roll it back because it was like they only had like two sets of bathrooms, one on each side, and people are like, I don't want to go all the way to the other side of the building to use a bathroom. So they had to kind of like change those up a bit. But I think the sense was there that and actually this is sort of a side thing. So as part of my working with at the gym, I work with a lot of because this is just sort of like a front desk minimum wage kind of thing. I work with a lot of like high school students or college students. And I've noticed a large number of college students are choosing to live at home when they go to school.
Yeah.
And I try, I'm just some old man sitting at a desk, I guess, ranting, but I keep telling them, I was like, I think you are wasting an opportunity here that's only going to come during this period of your life. Once it's gone, it's gone. To have those collisions, those creative collisions where like you'll be in your dorm room and somebody will pop in and be like, "Hey man, you want to go to a party?" And be like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, yeah, let's go." Like those people aren't going to be kicking in the door to your bedroom at home, right? Like just being around people. When we were at the office, I take baby and be like, "Oh, I got to take baby on a walk. You want to go do a walk and talk?" And then I'd grab, Tom or someone from my office, and we just walk around the block and we would chat about stuff and kind of like have a moment to get our juices flowing. And I think that's important because what we do, it's a very creative industry, even though it's programming. You know, I think a lot of people think of it like a typical, maybe, I don't know, SaaS or platform that you might find at like an insurance company or something. What we do requires constant creative decision making, and you need those moments.
Yeah. No, I mean, like most of our greatest accomplishments at the lab started as like back of the napkin type drawings at one of the local pubs. I mean, like it's one of those things where, just being able to be around someone in a different setting, thinking openly, usually lubricated by alcohol sometimes. Yeah, it allows you to get more than just talking to someone. You get body language. You get a sense of like whether or not it's making sense to someone. I think when we're on video calls, we're somewhat performing. Like I feel like we're performing to an audience. I probably sit up straighter when I'm on a video call than in reality. They often feel a little phony to me.
Okay.
And you're right. There's not an opportunity for kind of that serendipitous meeting where like, hey, what do you think of this real quick? Or let's go whiteboard this. I want you to see this. I want you to see this, whatever, and tell me what you think. That is really kind of the joy that I get from doing this. I like walking around and seeing all the projects that faculty and students are working on. I can just kind of stick my head in and see the progress and
Yeah, totally.
give feedback if they want it. And
I think that's one of the things personally too that I'm noticed I'm really struggling with, and I've been telling my team it's like if you need something from me, you need to put a meeting on the calendar because I've been getting so busy, and because everything is remote, I just don't have like the time to look into stuff or whatever. But like if I was there in person, somebody could just be like, "Hey, can I show you something? Can we talk for a few minutes?" I'll be like, "Yeah, let's do that." But everything, particularly if it's something that like they want you to play or like experience, because it's something like, well, then I need to download the build on my machine. I need to get it set up. I need to make sure that yada yada, as opposed to like Tom just being like, "Hey, can you come over here real fast and check it out?" I'm also kind of curious. I don't know sort of the best way to phrase this, but we have seen a huge increase in the number of academic programs across the country, specifically tailored towards game design. And there is a part of me that worries that we might be training too many people into our industry and it won't be able to sustain the jobs, even disregarding all the layoffs that we're seeing here. So I'm curious, have you thought about that? Like, is that something that the school talks about, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a problem, especially if you kind of treat it as the only avenue for this kind of degree as entertainment games. Um, we try to take a holistic approach to game development, right? So most of the students that graduate from our program become developers or producers, like front office or developers. Like every once in a while, we land some designers. We're not really an art program, so you know, landing art programs is or landing art jobs is not common. But we also are a very small program, and we've always been a very small program I mean, we're a state university. We could open the floodgates and say anyone that's interested, come take this. But we cap the number of students that we take in every year because we know that
What's that
there's just
cap? Like, what's a small program?
20 students a year.
Okay.
And, so like a full class would be like 75 to 80 students. And to be honest with you, like half of those students, they will go through our program and realize that they like the technical stuff, but they're not really wanting to work in games so much anymore. But because they learned to develop software, they've learned some other production related stuff. It's not uncommon for them to do software development at like Nationwide or to go work in media, to go produce television or film.
Hmm.
So I think, for all of the game programs that are very, very much just focused on games and games only, I think they're doing somewhat of a disservice to the students. Um, I think if you treat this as a way of getting skills, that obviously would make you attractive to a game studio, but would also allow you to do other things, it's important.
Yeah.
No one, no one at 17 knows for sure what they're gonna, do professionally. Like they'll have interest at that point. Um, but we get a lot of students that clearly just like playing games, but absolutely hate developing games. I mean, they're not compatible always.
Yeah.
And often, like when we're deep in crunch, the idea of playing games infuriates me. It's like I want nothing to do with playing of games right now. Um, this is this is the worst job developing, blah 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 blah. Um, but there has always been a lot of programs that kind of start up in the game space because it is something that is attractive to 17, 18-year olds, but they don't last very long, or they kind of like pivot to be something very narrow. Um, yeah, so I don't think it's ever going to change. I do think that there are I think if you're tied to a research university, there's going to be more opportunities for you to get experience working on projects before you graduate, which helps like kind of build out a portfolio.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I've just always thought, I've been teaching at Columbus State. I teach the Intro to Game Design course there. I've been doing that for almost a decade. I've taught at Shawnee State before. Um, I think I've loosely been invited to teach at OU before, but I'm just saying,
Yeah.
wink, wink. But
So,
like when I was in healthcare, and we had talked a lot about these different things, and so healthcare is interesting because it's like a very structured system. So you think about doctors, for example, like from beginning to end, their entire like work career process is laid out in front of them, which includes getting into med school. So you've got 4 years of undergrad, you got your MCAT, then you're going to generally have 4 to 6 years of med school plus residencies and whatever. So there's an inherent barrier to entry there that's pretty difficult to get past. And then on top of that, the admissions into med school is highly kind of regulated.
yeah.
And that it's interesting because that does a couple of things, but one of the things that it does, and for all you libertarians out there, it also creates an artificial barrier for the free market because it intentionally throttles back the number of people that can enter into the system. And so one of the things that does is also keeps doctor salaries high. So that's good for them. But the sort of other side of that coin that's always talked about was dentistry for a while. Lawyers and dentists for a while were pumping through students through their system to the
Yeah, and
eventually it got
pharmacists.
what's that?
And pharmacists.
Yeah,
I
and
mean, like they were,
pharmacists.
yeah.
Yeah. And then eventually got to the point where the sort of the system was just like, we have too many lawyers. We have too many dentists. There's not enough jobs for them. They're struggling to kind of make ends meet. And, those same with pharmacists. Those are the sort of upper level professionals are also kind of in a much challenging because they just spent $250,000-$300,000 to go to school and now they can't find work. And so I'm kind of looking at our industry. I think it's great that there's educational programs, and I think Ohio's got some of the best. I mean,
For
you know,
sure.
I mean, Shawnee State that I've worked with is doing amazing stuff. Miami, Kent, OU,
Yep.
OSU,
Case
obviously.
Western. Yep.
Yep, Case Western, Institute of Art, Cleveland's Institute of Art's doing some great stuff. Um, but I worry that we may be creating too many developers. I'm using that game devs
Yep.
as a general sense, which then begs the question: okay, well, if we can't get them into the quote unquote corporate world, the only avenue they have is to either go, like you said, to a transferable industry where they can take their skills. And I also do believe, I don't have any evidence to prove this other than an internal gut feeling, and I'm always right, so we'll just go with that. That I find that a lot of people that come at things with a game developer mentality and then go to a more, I hesitate to say traditional, like an IBM or whatever, they tend to be the most successful because I think they've sort of been field tested and trained to,
Well,
to
they're
think out
like,
of the box.
yeah, they're professional problem solvers at that point.
Hmm.
I mean, like they're able to look at complex systems and say, "Oh, okay, I see what's going on here, and I can see what's missing." Right. And I think that's a skill that any company would love to have.
Hmm.
Um,
Where and I think a lot of
and there's other factors like, some people want to get married and have kids, and I'm not sure working at Bungie is the best lifestyle choice for that. It's just, but if I were 22 and unattached at that time, and I had an opportunity to go work at Bungie, I would jump on it. But I don't imagine I would stay there more than 5 or 6 years before then taking a job at IBM or Apple or some other corporate behemoth that might have a little bit more structure and less competition. And
yeah.
um, I mean, you brought up med schools, and I think that's a really great industry to look at because the medical industry is very much an apprentice-based industry. There's a very clear pipeline.
Hmm.
Now it's very expensive. Like no one's going to dispute that. But they have a very strict, you start with an undergraduate degree in something relevant like biology or whatever, or pre-med. And then, you go to med school, you do internships, you do residencies, and it's like this really, really defined pipeline.
Yeah. And
The games industry,
all of those pieces are part of a structured system. So it's not
that's
like,
right.
okay, now I got to go do an internship. I'm going to go to apply to 50 places. Like there is a process called matching that is a part of the
Yep.
system where you are matched for your internships, you're matched for your residencies to a particular hospital or healthcare system. So every part of that process is sort of laid out for you.
Yeah, and the industry and the schools are intertwined. They are both in sync on what that pipeline is and why it's important.
Yeah.
Creative industries, I have found, do not want to apprentice, right? One of the hardest things that we have for our students is like there are just so few internships with major, AAA studios across the country. There might be 100,000 game development related jobs in North America, but there might only be 500 internships a year, right? There's not really an established industry academic path.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is kind of still this bootstrap mentality where, oh, I can go on YouTube and learn everything I need to learn, and then I can make games. And like some of that is true. I think YouTube can make you a pretty advanced beginner in a lot of these areas. But if you've never been in an environment where you've worked with others to make a game, or gotten really good criticism, or looked at gaming through another lens, something other than just entertainment, right? It's really hard to convince someone in this pipeline that you fit, right? It's not just knowing how to program. It's not just knowing, how to do 3D modeling or sound design. It's knowing how to work on a team and showing that you can take an idea from kind of um, blue sky to completion. It's really hard to do. Um, and there's an incredible amount of resources out there for learning. Um, but I think structured learning is important.
Yeah.
And I really wish that, industry and academia were more aligned in games and other creative industries. I mean, it's the same with like film industry and film schools or video, whatever. Um, it's getting better, but it's still not designed to be a apprenticeship based trajectory. I mean, it's not like a med school in that regard.
Yeah, totally. And I think that that's it's made it challenging. It's probably, I think, a big way just a reflection of how the games industry occurred because in the early days of the industry there were no programs, no educational programs. It was just like an amalgamation of like weirdos from all sorts of different industries that are just like, I want to make games or whatever, or we're maybe doing something on the side. So you might have a developer that studied, history sitting next to a developer that comes from economics, being project led by a designer who has a physics degree or something. It would just be these weird kind of confluence of people getting together. And that's how these larger companies arose. And then you mentioned there's just so much churn and burn on talent that I think the industry, I see this a lot in board games right now. So like board games it is a publisher's market for board games. There are so many people that want to get their games published that publishers just have like, they hold all the leverage in every conversation. And I think a lot of these game companies are in the same position as far as talent. Now, a lot of these game companies are kind of bent over a barrel, for a lack of a better thing to say, with their funders, their investors and publishers lately because of how the economics of the industry has kind of developed over the past decade or so. But it does make it really, really hard. And I see a lot of, this actually might be an interesting question for you because I'm seeing a lot, I'm predominantly in the indie space, have been. I mean, GDEX is a platform to help small and mid-size, Bungie doesn't need GDEX, right? Like GDEX might benefit from having Bungie, but a PlayStation doesn't need a GDEX. But a lot of these smaller developers, these mid-sized developers do. They need effective, cost-effective avenues to be able to promote their game, to be able to connect with other developers, to be able to connect with publishers and whatnot. And I've been seeing lately a lot of folks that are in the AA, AAA space who are leaving that space, starting to want to kind of create their own studios and are just like wholly unprepared for the business aspects of it. Because
For sure.
they're used to being in a large studio where they might be a lead designer, a lead creative director, whatever. And all of that like foundational infrastructural stuff is done for them. There's always a
Yeah, they
project
don't have to worry
manager.
about budgeting
Yeah.
computers or software or furniture.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's always a finance person in the wings. There's project managers around making sure things get taken care of. There's marketing people that are handling certain things. And when they go off and do it themselves, they're just completely unprepared for the system. And I feel like we're sort of setting a lot of people up for failure in these ways. I'm not sure what the solution is other than like we just keep banging the drum locally here to support the industry. But
I mean, one of the things that we require our students to have is a business minor. It's at some point you're going to be touching money, right? Like regardless of whatever industry you're in, the hope is you're going to get promoted and you're going to be managing other people. And so it's important to understand finance and accounting and, business management, all of that. And it's, you know, a lot of students, they may want to go work for their favorite studio after school, but they are thinking long term, I want my own studio. And there are a lot of great studios to point to as like perfect models. I think Shell Games, Jesse Shell's company in
In
Pittsburgh is
Pittsburgh,
like
yeah.
it's like a perfect studio in my mind because they make these awesome high quality games, but they also do theme park design and like other types of interactive content. And so they're not so much of a game studio as like a Swiss Army knife. And I think if you can think like that, if you can work in structures like that, it I mean, it makes you adaptable and I think ultimately successful. I mean, I know that you all have done like healthcare related games. That's probably not what you like
We
wanted to do necessarily, but it is something that keeps it going and keeps you fresh and it's bringing in revenue and
Yeah, I mean, there's a host of things that keep the lights on, as it were. And we have worked one of our local partners here. We're working on two projects with them right now. They do like science centers and museum interactive experiences. And they come to us because they've sort of hired up over time a little bit, but they're sort of interactive, creative development, that's not what they focused on, but the world's moving more and more in that direction. And so they come to us when they need help with, we do lots of stuff in Unity, for example. Um, and so we've kind of carved like a little niche in that space. And that's where we get the vast majority of our money. Like GDEX doesn't make any money. I mean, we're lucky if we like break even. If we walk away with like 5 grand from GDEX, that's awesome. Like we're not making any money from that. And so that's how we have been able to function. And Tom, our lead programmer, who's been on the show before, he has, if we were just like look through his portfolio of projects, he has worked on stuff from practically every industry you can think of, using sort of every design philosophy, because that's just kind of how we have to survive and how we work. So
yeah.
it is a lot of trial by fire for sure.
Yeah, I mean like I try to tell my students, um being good at many things oftentimes can be like a better place to be in than just being great at like one thing, right? If you can code, fantastic. But if you can code and also do 3D modeling, you're a Swiss Army knife now. Like you're way more attractive.
Or at least being able to understand the needs of the 3D art team. Like that's
That's right.
that's that's a big thing
Communicating
where,
with them is a big part of it. Yeah.
yeah, you'll have programmers that just don't understand how to interface with the art side of it, and they're building out like technical infrastructure based on what they think is best from a tech end, which is great. But if it's not usable by the art team, doesn't get you anywhere. And
Yeah.
by the same token, you'll see, I'm sure you see, well, maybe not because more art, but I'll get like art portfolios sometimes, and we'll be looking at their 3D model work, and we're like, wow, this looks amazing. It's completely unusable, but it looks
Yeah.
amazing. It's just
Yeah. Yeah.
you will never be able to incorporate this model into a scene, and run it above 8 frames per second.
Oh.
But it looks great.
Yeah. Yeah. Your 5 million poly character model is phenomenal, but
Yeah.
um we're not running it off of a supercomputer here, so
Yeah, what was like the original? Was it the original like Avatar or whatever? It was like 24 hours per frame to render or something
oh,
ridiculous.
easily. Yeah,
And you're
easily.
just like, yeah, that's not real time.
So we have an alum that does he works on the visual effects for um is it Lightstorm? Is that James Cameron's company? And they've like flipped the model. They do graphics now in real time so they can have them on set. So like instead of being shooting on nothing but a green screen, you could put on a VR helmet and see yourself in that environment. It's been really helpful for the actors.
Hmm.
But it's things like that. Like that is a game industry job, but to make, really high end visual effects for films. Um, it's important to kind of open your mind to things like that as possible career paths.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, I, so behind the scenes, I'm trying to always put these pieces together, right? To always try to like connect these folks, whether it's people in academia like you, or maybe industry leaders that have been in the AAA space for 20 years, or small business folks like me and others. But what do you think? Maybe I hate to say, like, what are the top three things? But maybe like the top things that kind of come to your mind that, like, if we could thread this needle here locally in Ohio, we could actually like accelerate our games industry in the region 10x over the next decade or something. Like, what are a couple things that are kind of always percolating in your brain?
Yeah, I think the top one for me is mentorship structures. If there was more of that in place, like if you're a professional, regardless of like kind of what level you're working at, AAA games, AA, single, like whatever. If you're a professional and you have some bandwidth to mentor a student kind of coming up through that, the learning process, that's invaluable. We started about 6 years ago. We started a mentorship program in our school where we get alums to sign up. It's completely voluntary for these alums, and then we pair them up with a upperclassman who has similar interests, compared to the person that we're matching them to. And they just meet once a month and talk and review portfolios, and like it's been the most valuable networking kind of starting point that we've offered, right? A lot of students, especially post-COVID students, don't understand networking, or too terrified of the concept of just going up to someone cold and having a conversation. Can only hear these principles from their instructors so many times. It's like they need to hear it from someone outside of the program saying the same things. And that has opened doors for these students like you wouldn't imagine. Like, maybe not necessarily at the company that they're working at, like Meta or Google, but they're like, oh, I know someone at this company that's looking for someone for that matches your skill set perfectly. Why don't you apply? I'll let them know that you're going to apply. And that's been like the best pipeline you can imagine. So that would be the top of my list. I mean, the other two, like investments, is of course like
Money, yeah.
money. I mean, this is all completely driven by money. I think when it comes to money, Ohio, especially kind of like the Columbus area, um, should not focus on competing with uh, entertainment games that are kind of already headquartered somewhere, or markets that are already kind of headquartered somewhere. Like I've heard like Silicon Valley of the Midwest a lot. I've heard Hollywood of the Midwest, especially for like Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's like
Silicon
no,
Valley.
do something else. I mean, like um, Ohio has probably the best healthcare systems in the country, probably top tier in the world. Um, Lean into that more. I mean, be known for kind of the healthcare training space. Orlando is like a place known for theme parks, obviously, but it's also the military simulation capital of the world, right? So, like, there are opportunities for kind of emerging markets to really own something. It's just going to be really hard for it to be something that's competing with an established market. Um, Cleveland's never going to compete with LA or Vancouver when it comes to
Yeah,
films.
yeah,
Um,
I agree. That's one of the things I keep saying. So real fast, Garrett is in our chat, who's the director of the Shawnee State University's Game Accelerator. He's doing a shameless plug for that, since we are working on building out a robust mentor network there, for sure. And that's one of the things too that like we just the other day, Wes and I were talking, because we used to do internships. We used to have 1 to 3 interns at Multivarious every semester, and then when COVID hit, we just kind of stopped. We might take one every so often, but I was just like, well, we're all remote. I'm like, what kind of experience can we give somebody if they're just sitting at their home all day connecting virtually to us? I was just like, I don't, I don't really know. Um, but to the other point, that's one of the things that I find very frustrating about Central Ohio. I'll have so many conversations where Columbus is like, it's like they're trying to be like this hip, cool tech city that invites younger people and gets them to stay and gets them excited. And I'm like, dude, I'm sitting right here, man. Like I've given you the answer on a silver platter here, and they're like, no, we're gonna go like do something with Intel for $4 billion. I was just like, whatever, I'm not asking you for $4 billion, right? And it's frustrating because it's just nobody in the area really understands the industry. And like one of the number one rules of being an investor is don't invest in things you don't understand. So we're kind of in this vicious cycle. So it's not like I don't blame the investors for not being there, because like you said, most investors are 65 years old plus. They see games as a toy. They don't understand it. We were just having a conversation yesterday around the accelerator where I kind of gave a sort of, I don't know, hopefully poignant response where I was like, gamers and game developers, particularly people our age and kind of plus minus 10 years, we're used to constantly being pandered to by people that do not understand gaming. They're always trying to sell us something or trick us in some way. And they're like, they'll use some kind of like terminology for games, but like they're not really using it right. And so there's just been this kind of constant cycle where like nobody understands the industry of the market. Nobody's willing to invest or put money into it. And those that do are always just trying to get something out of us. And it creates this cycle where we just can't really kind of move ahead. And then on top of all of that, our political system is constructed in a way sort of inherently where your politicians are always looking for the big win during their term. And so like, if you could be like, oh, I can get an Activision Blizzard to build a studio out here, right? They would probably be jazzed by that. They might even put money into that. I don't know. But then I'm like, well, then you do that without really properly building out the rest of the infrastructure. And that company is just going to siphon up every available resource possible. The indie scene's going to die. It's just going to make it so that it's going to be that company. And then when that company decides to shut that branch down, the whole thing collapses and we're back to square one again.
Yeah, and that's why it's important for cities to kind of own a niche, right? I mean, every modern city wants to be hip and wants to be, attractive to tech companies, but like, you can't make something, you can't make a city appealing to all tech companies. Like it's impossible. Like, how do you, if Columbus said, we want to be we want to be like the chip manufacturing center of the universe, right? And Intel is our first step in that regard. Great, own that, right? Like say that we are putting all of our political interests into expanding chip manufacturing, and then Columbus becomes known as that. But when they leave it open to, we want to be attractive to tech companies, you're never going to get a critical mass of any particular tech company unless you really kind of commit to an industry. It could be games, it could be entertainment games, it could be healthcare games. It could be something. It just can't be everything to everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, I that's why I've been banging the drum of I've had a plan. I've been working on a $20 million 3-year investment for a 10-year plan to really build out sort of the small business aspect of our industry, which I think could then help with some of the things you mentioned out, mentor connections, job placements for graduates, just general like networking and connectivity into the industry as a whole. One of the things that I've found, and I feel very fortunate that our industry is like this, is like I have made insane connections with people in the industry. Oh, you want to get down, sweetie? With people in the industry who are willing to have phone calls and connect me to people, and I think that's amazing. You know, just being like little old us here in Columbus, Ohio, and so we've managed to build like these really strong connections, but we also need the financial support to make these things happen. And I don't think it's going to take that much. I'm saying 20 million, but 20 million over 3 years for a decades long plan that could create thousands of jobs is not a lot. Not a
Yeah.
lot. And so I keep banging that drum, and I'm hopeful that we can find a mechanism to move that somehow. I keep holding hope, because I do think that here in the Midwest we can be that niche,
Yeah.
for indie games and small businesses, focusing on creating. I say this all the time: focusing on creating sustainable businesses in the industry, not hit driven successes. And there was an article, we didn't get to the article just because we had so much fun chatting, but there was an article talking about how just the cost, publishing has changed because the cost of games are becoming so exorbitant that even games, I remember, I don't know, this was, I think, the first Tomb Raider when that came out, and it sold like 7 million units or whatever, and Squaresoft was like, oh, it's a failure, it's an internal failure. And they're like, how can 7 million units be a failure? Like, that just, what? You know, it
Yeah.
sold way more than most analysts thought it was going to sell, or analysts. And so for us, and maybe it's a Midwestern thing, like create sustainable businesses that are going to be around for 5, 10, 20 years. And if they get a hit, if they get a Minecraft, if they get an Among Us, whatever, Helldivers, like, awesome. But help them build a business so that every game they release can feed the next game and continue that cycle. And
Yeah.
that's the
And,
tact we've been taking.
and you have to embrace remote working, right? So these companies could be headquartered in Columbus, but they, you know, should expect to hire people from all around the world. Columbus is going to be attractive to people for in-person work because it's an affordable city, right? They are really starting to like create entertainment and other lifestyle things that would attract an audience like that. But some people, need to live in Salt Lake City because they're taking care of aging parents, but they want to work for this company in Columbus. I think that's just something that has to be embraced.
Totally.
It's not something that everyone needs to love, but it's the future. And honestly, that can save companies money. You're not worrying about like renting office space and fitting out
Yeah.
operational stuff in person. But
But even if you
if
do,
the
it's going to be a far cheaper endeavor than doing it in San Francisco.
quite a bit,
You
yeah,
know,
quite a bit.
and so I think that we can, if the main issue is cost, which it's always cost, right? That's what the problem everybody always has is the cost of stuff. And it's like you can live full time. Going back to your comment from the beginning of our conversation here, is you can have a good solid salary here in Ohio. You can live in a nice place. You can take care of your family. And it's going to be cheaper than San Francisco by a noticeable margin. And for you living here, you're going to have a better quality of life. Even if you're getting,
I mean, like,
yeah, go ahead.
Ohio University is in the poorest county in Ohio, right? It's quite the contrast. You have like a world-class university, and then poverty, like kind of surrounding it. The the great part of that for professionals, like poverty is not great. There's nothing great about poverty, but
Yeah.
the dollar bill goes a lot further down here than it would anywhere, right? A $200,000 house in Athens would be close to $500,000 in Columbus, probably $1 million on the West Coast, right? So if you're able to work for these companies all around the planet making San Francisco type salaries, but living in southeastern Ohio kind of more affordably, like you're going to get a lot more for your dollar by doing that.
Yeah.
And it helps the area, right? Because now we have high paying jobs and their tax revenue is going into our schools, and that is improving our community. It's improving our poverty levels because now there's just more money moving through the community, and that everyone benefits from that.
Yeah.
And so that's why I was skeptical at first. I thought there was no way, kind of past the pandemic, that any company was going to continue to embrace this remote model. But I've met a lot of people that truly love it, and I don't think they would want to change from that. And so we should embrace it. You don't have to like it, but you can learn to love it, I think.
You can learn to love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're seeing a lot of companies that are moving their teams back into the office. I could probably do some more research, so I don't know. Like, I don't know if the productivity is better or worse. I'm sure it's highly job dependent between remote and on site. But I get the feeling, maybe this is me being a little cynical, that a lot of this is just justifying office rental costs. They're like, we're renting this office, we might as well stick people in there and have someone do something.
We have a 20-story skyscraper that's sitting empty. That's costing us money. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what I haven't looked recently, but it was like up to 2023, it was like 60% of Columbus's downtown office space was vacant. And this goes back to, I could rant about, I love Columbus. I think it's a great city. I love Ohio despite its numerous flaws, but I do love it. But one of the things that drives me crazy is this constant need for Columbus to keep building up its downtown. And it's like, it's this constant push, despite everyone else being like, we don't give a shit about downtown, right? We have all these outliers, like Dublin has this Bridge Street project. Like, you've got all these areas that are outside of downtown that are doing fun, cool stuff where you can get to easily. You don't have to pay for parking. Not a huge pain in the ass to get around. They're all safe. And so I'm kind of the person who's like, look, back to your thing about the niche, right? Like, I think Columbus is trying to be it's been trying to be a mini New York, I think, for probably 40 years here. I was just like, why don't we focus on the thing that we're good at and people obviously want, which is creating these fun little epicenters of like vibe, right? And like we have German Village, which has this cool vibe to it. Shore North, obviously, that's a little bit more downtown. Clintonville, but there's all these areas around where it's just like, why can't that just be the thing and have those pop up? And then it's like, well, one weekend I want to go up to Dublin, the next I want to go to Hilliard and whatever. Instead of trying to like force us into a box that just doesn't work. And that box costs us way more money than the other option's more fun. It's what people want and it's cheaper.
And there's successful models to follow. I mean, Los Angeles is that way.
Yeah.
Like you can't find a restaurant outside of 8 to 5 in downtown Los Angeles. The city is vacant. Like they don't expect anyone to come into the city after work hours. But they have all these really cool, vibrant communities.
Mm-hmm.
Not nearly as safe as like Dublin or German Village, but like, Santa Monica or Hollywood and Venice Beach. They really embrace that, right? Instead of trying to get people to come into their downtown area, which is a nightmare and empties out after 5 o'clock, they are embracing kind of the suburbs more. And it works for them.
Yeah, totally. Well, man, we've approached our time here together. I've really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Sweet. So everybody, unfortunately, we have to end. That is episode 35 of the Sandbox.Space weekly podcast. Every week we do a conversation, 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern on Twitch. You can also find us at www.thesandbox.space, where you can sign up for our weekly newsletter, where we post all the articles that we talk about every week, as well as a link to this podcast. And of course, GDEX, don't forget GDEX, www.thegdex.com, which is coming up here in a little over 2 months. Please spread the word about that. It's going to be a great time. We got some really exciting things on that. So on behalf of myself, Chris, baby girl, who's in my lap, John, thank you again for being our special guest this week.
Thank you.
You will find us every week, and we really appreciate you watching. Thank you for everybody in the chat, and and we will see you next week.